Welcome back to the Scaredy Cat Guide, my friends. My name is Jenny, and today we are talking about Space Mountain in Disney's Magic Kingdom. If you're new here, this is the channel where we talk about Disney and anxiety, we talk about sensory issues, and really just anything that you might want to know if you're an anxious rider at Disney World, like me. Now, Space Mountain is a Magic Kingdom classic, and it might surprise you to find out that it's actually one of the slowest roller coasters in all 4 Disney parks. However, even though this coaster doesn't have speed on its side, does not mean it's not intense. So without further ado, let's dive into those details. This classic thrill ride contains darkness, high speeds, and, of course, as a coaster, its fair share of twists, turns, and drops. On top of that, this attraction also contains some loud sound design, some flashing lights, and a very rough ride system. Now let's start off with the obvious here. This is an indoor coaster, and because of this, is very, very dark. Of course, we do have a few dimly lit scenes. We do get a few space station visuals. We get to see a pretty cool space shuttle and even a command center as we're going up this lift. But for the most part, this ride takes place in near complete darkness. Of course, we also do have some twinkling stars in the distance, and you can see some galaxies and otherwise just pretty basic space visuals along the way. Now, moving right along, let's talk about that speed. As I said before, this is actually one of the slowest coasters in all of Disney World, but you may be surprised at how slow it actually is. Space Mountain actually has a top speed of only 28.7 miles per hour. Now, just to put that into perspective, the actual slowest coaster in all of Walt Disney World is, not surprisingly, the Barnstormer, right across the park in the Magic Kingdom. The crazy thing is the Barnstormer actually has a top speed of 25 miles per hour, so it is only marginally slower than Space Mountain. So why does Space Mountain feel so much more intense when it is a measly 3 miles per hour faster than Barnstormer? Well, in my opinion, it has everything to do with the darkness. When you have a dark coaster like this one, it definitely can lend itself to being a very disorienting experience. Because you can't look around you and ground yourself in where you were going, that lack of visuals can really up the intensity factor and make those thrill elements seem all that more heightened. Now, as far as actual coaster maneuvers go, this one is pretty basic. Space Mountain, of course, has its fair share of twists, turns, and drops, but there's nothing really crazy, nothing to write home about, nothing out of the box. We don't have any launches, any loops, or upside down sections. And really the shining star, no pun intended, when it comes to roller coaster maneuvers on this attraction is a spiral maneuver. So you'll find yourself in several points making really tight turns and really going in a circular spiral motion. So overall, not very intense when it comes to the actual coaster and coaster elements or even the speed, but definitely look out for it if darkness is something that you don't really do well with on coasters, like me. Now let's talk about potential sensory issues here. We cannot talk about Space Mountain without talking about flashing lights, some loud sound design, and overall, I would call Space Mountain a pretty sensory heavy experience. Now, most of this has to do with the theming. Those flashing lights are really just part of the space station visual, but they really are in your face and all around you, and if you are sensitive to flashing lights or really just kind of visual overstimulation in general, this one could be pretty uncomfortable. Now, on top of the actual theming, we also have just a very rough and noisy ride system. Space Mountain has been around for quite a while. It is older, the track is definitely not smooth by any means, and whether it's going up a lift or actually doing the coaster maneuvers themselves, you're in for a pretty bumpy ride. Now let's talk about those ride vehicles. Now, Space Mountain has a slightly different ride system than other coasters in the park. What we do have here is a 2-car train. Each of these cars contain 3 single file seats. So if you or someone in your party really likes to sit next to somebody and really gets comfort from that, just be warned, you will not be able to sit next to anybody on this coaster. Now, of course, your loved ones will be sitting either in front or behind you, but you won't be able to, say, lean over and squeeze somebody's hand if you get nervous. Now, when it comes to ride restraints, we have individual lap bars. These are pretty standard when it comes to other coasters like it. We see the same sort of thing on Expedition Everest or Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. And one last thing that I will mention is because this ride system is a little bit different, it can be a little bit difficult getting into the actual car. Now, of course, if you have any specific concerns or questions, be sure to ask a cast member. They can help you with accessibility concerns. But just from personal experience, I actually have a knee issue that made me kind of nervous about getting into these ride vehicles. Now, I was able to do it. It took a little bit of finagling to not bend my knee in a certain way, but I would just be remiss if I didn't mention that getting into these ride vehicles is just a little bit more complicated than the typical coaster you'll find in the parks. Now, last but certainly not least, let's talk about that ride duration. Space Mountain clocks in at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which is pretty standard for other coasters in Disney World. When it comes to claustrophobia, this one is not too terrible, at least for me. Of course, we have that lap bar, but there is no overhead harness or anything like that, and the ride time is not terribly long. So overall, not a super claustrophobic experience, and it's pretty standard as far as other coasters go. And now that you have all the facts, let's actually go hop in line. I'm so excited. Let's go ride this together. You'll find the entrance to this attraction in Tomorrowland in Disney's Magic Kingdom. Now, the great thing about the Space Mountain queue is that it is almost all indoors. So if you were worried about standing out in that hot sun, you'll be relieved to find that you will have AC the entire time you are in line. So once stepping into the queue, you'll find yourself in this very nicely themed space station of sorts. There are a couple of stairs here and a lot of ramps, and for the most part, you will just walk down these magnificently themed hallways that really make you feel like you are on a station and about to board a spaceship. You'll get some beautiful starry views outside of windows. There will be a couple of cool graphics and maps and things like that. And although this attraction is older and it's been around for quite a while, the theming here doesn't feel particularly dated to me. Maybe it's just because I'm very nostalgic with this particular ride, but it's still very cool even if it's on the older side. Now, after walking through these hallways for quite a while, you will come upon the actual loading station. Now, this area is pretty large and you will actually wind back and forth for quite a while before actually getting to a cast member. However, from this point on, you can see the ride vehicles, you can see the loading station, and really the line just snakes around in the same general area before you find a cast member and they send you on your way to prepare to board. Now, once hopping inside, you will secure the lap bar and the coaster can commence. You'll set off into a dark tunnel before suddenly finding yourself surrounded by these bright lights that are zipping around you. This can definitely feel very overstimulating, and with the sound design and theming in there as well, I could see it being pretty intimidating. However, after exiting this tunnel, you'll find yourself on the lift, and this is really the only part of the ride where you can look around and look at some of the show scenes around you. There are some cool props. Everything is static and again, maybe a little bit dated, but it's still pretty cool to look around. Now, once again, this lift is very loud, so be prepared for that, but once you get to the top, the coaster can really set off. Now, really, all that you'll experience here are those basic twists and turns like you'd experience on maybe Thunder Mountain or other rides like it. Of course, there are several of those spiral maneuvers where you're taking a very sharp turn in kind of a spiral motion, but rest assured, you will not go upside down. There's nothing too crazy on this coaster, and like I said, even the drops are not even that intense. You're surrounded by stars and galaxies, but honestly, there's not much to look at as you're zipping through. And after only 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the ride is over. You'll pull into the loading station, a cast member will help you off, and you'll be free to exit. Now, exiting this ride is very straightforward, but you will find yourself in many of the same types of hallways that you encountered when you were entering the ride. And there we have it. What do you think about Space Mountain? Of course, this one has been around for such a long time and it holds a special place in my heart and is just very nostalgic to me. However, it's not one that I do every time I'm in Magic Kingdom. It's very rough, it's very disorienting, and sometimes, honestly, I leave with a headache. However, it is still very fun. It's not too terribly intense if you're new to thrill rides or roller coasters, but I would definitely not say that it's the smoothest or easiest coaster if you're starting to get into thrill rides. Now, of course, if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more like it, don't forget to like, subscribe, stick around, stay a while. We would love to have you in our little community of anxious riders. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.